Good evening from Johannesburg. I'm Tony Leon. This is Let's Have It Out. Last week, a parliamentary committee continued to take the national temperature on amending the Constitution to allow for expropriation of property without compensation. There's a lot of racial heat, historical dust, and believe me, plenty of party politics involved here. But on other fronts, other than the good news today, hopefully from the president of China, a lot of bad economic news was crowding in on the local and international scene. We have President Trump's trade wars, which could hugely impact a small economy in South Africa like ours. And tonight on Let's Have It Out, I'm going to do what Pravin Gordhan famously urged us to do at the height of Jacob Zuma's state capture project, the same man, incidentally, who urged expropriation without compensation on us all. I'm going to join the dots on what removing or amending Section 25 of our Constitution will do to your pocket, your house, your flat, your pension fund, and even your job or your hope of ever getting one. Now, on Thursday last week, on the economic front, our Reserve Bank slashed 30% off its previous growth forecast, and now says that we'll only grow at around 1.2% as opposed to the 1.7% they were forecasting earlier in the year. This means if we continue on this low growth path, it'll take around 100 years to double national income per capita. But if we were to get the 5% plus that we were promised in the National Development Plan, we could reach that same target in just 13 years. And that is the difference that high versus low levels of economic growth make. But in the same news cycle, one of President Ramaphosa's growth envoys, tasked to find roughly $100 billion of foreign direct investment, that is former Finance Minister Trevor Manuel, admitted that the debate on expropriating without compensation is, in his words, a very big challenge to communicate. But in one of the world's few remaining communist countries, Cuba, much admired by our ruling party, events are moving in the opposite direction to moves here at home. For the first time since the Cuban Revolution, nearly 70 years ago, Cuba will also amend its constitution. But it intends with its amendment to enshrine private property rights, something it has long rejected as a vestige of capitalism. Perhaps it has learnt the lesson of one of the richest countries in South America, a region I know well from my years as South Africa's representative in those parts, Venezuela, whose economy, since expropriation without compensation was applied there, has collapsed. Just today, the IMF released its figures that it now projects that inflation in Venezuela will reach 1 million% this year. That's not a reading error, that's a fact. Zimbabwe in 2007, with the same policies, also got to 1 million%. And the only other country in recent economic history to get to that stratospheric level of economic disaster was pre-war Nazi Germany. And in Venezuela, you've got food riots in what was once a very food-rich country. So we're going to unpack all this tonight. This is Let's Have It Out, and you can have your say, and here's how.
Tweet us at ENCA using the hashtag LHIO. Call us on 011-759-6340. Or send us a WhatsApp or WhatsApp video on 082-884-6370. And make sure those videos are no longer than 30 seconds, please.
My guest this evening is a woman who has stood at the forefront of the land without expropriation debate, and some may say spearheaded various land grabs in Gauteng. I'm joined by EFF Gauteng Chairperson Mandisa Misaka. Good evening and welcome, Mandisa, and good to have you on the program, and thanks for your time.
Yes, Mr. Leon, good evening to you too. I didn't spearhead...
this is what the research said. But let's not divert, let's talk about the economic figures.
Fine. EFF has a permanent program called land occupation, and I really wish all of us could get with the program and understand it. And the reason we have that program is primarily because 79% of South Africa's land is currently in private hands. 90% of within that cohort is white people.
No, sorry, I need to stop you there, Mandisa. You say 90%. Just today, the Centre for Development and Enterprise produced a 70-page report which says that since 1994, since democracy, 20% of agri-land in South Africa, agricultural land, has been transferred from white people to black people.
No, but that's not true.
Well, you say it's not true.
That's
they
not
say
true
it's
because
true
under the current land restitution program of the ANC government, which, by the
That's a
way,
separate
has
issue.
been extremely corruptly handled,
Yes, we
right?
can agree on
and
that.
mishandled. Only 9% has been transferred. Let's stick to the reason
No,
why.
no, no. But sorry, you're mixing two things together.
I'm not.
You are. They are saying by all means of transfer, not communal land. You support people not having private
I'm not sure what you mean
rights.
by all means of transfer.
All means of
because
transfer.
we must
Willing
be-
seller, willing buyer.
We must be
under
very
Section
clear
25.
that this all means of transfer that you're talking about is not inclusive and it does not accommodate Africans. Africans can't afford to buy land in South
But
Africa.
the state, and sorry, can we just talk about affording land? Can you explain to me how, in a country which has currently got a 2.7 trillion, not million, billion, trillion rand national debt, we are going to afford to simply take people's land away when we only have 106,000 taxpayers, all of whom I presume own property, because they're very rich, relatively speaking, to actually fund most of the taxes which are needed for government service. How does this add up in a country with 1%
we must
growth?
not patronize our own people. Because if you keep on this neoliberal rhetoric
but
about
let's cut out the rhetoric and talk
106,000
about-
taxpayers,
Well, there are.
and you forget that poor people are actually paying with their blood
I
and
said
sweat.
private.
Every
Sorry,
citizen
but let's-
pays tax.
let's deal with
Every
figures, not-
citizen pays VAT. Every citizen bears the brunt of the current high fuel prices. Every citizen, especially the poor, are actually subsidizing your electricity bill.
Well,
because
you're a well-paid public representative, so I wouldn't talk about who's...
It doesn't make a difference. A black person who's well paid and a white person who are well paid are definitely by any stretch of the
Can we
imagination
go back to the
not on the same
106,000
same
people?
framework.
106,000
You cannot
sorry.
patronize the poor,
no one is-
the 40 million
You're
poor black
interrupting,
people
not
and not
patronising.
call them taxpayers.
I didn't say they
No,
weren't
but you've
taxpayers.
interrupted
I
me.
said there were 106,000
Mr. Leon,
taxpayers.
you
Sorry.
invited me here to talk to you. You didn't invite me here to watch you shout me down, and I'm not going to allow that.
I'm not shouting you down.
You need to come back to the topic. I'm here to discuss land expropriation
I
without
asked you a
compensation.
question. I asked you a question.
Yeah, so
there are
stay on the subject.
106,000 private citizens in South Africa who pay the bulk of the
Who
personal
are those
income
people?
taxes. I've no idea.
Give me
They're
an
not
example. Christo Visa, he's owing us 3 billion rand. Don't tell me about 106,000.
There are 106,000
elites
people
who are actually
who
not
owe
paying their tax.
most of the taxes, who pay most of the private taxes in this country.
Like Christo Visa.
Well, I mean, whether he pays tax or not, he says he pays his tax.
Okay.
But
So the
let's not
only
divert.
time, the
I'm
only
just
time,
saying, do
the
you
only
want-
time tax paying is important is when it's a person like Julius Malem. If it's Christo Visa and
I know nothing
he's
about
owing
Mr.
3 billion,
Malem's
no,
tax
you
affairs.
are the one. Let's come back to why we're here. Don't discuss this tax paying thing because we know how many wealthy white individuals actually spend every day of their lives dodging tax. That's why we are in the crisis that we are in today, because SARS fails to collect tax from everybody equitably. But let a poor black person owe 20,000 rand. They go into your bank account and take it out immediately. Why can't they go after Christo Visa and
I'm
take
sure
every
they're going
asset
after
that he has?
Christo Visa. I'm not here to represent SARS. Let's deal with another statistic that you don't want to discuss.
Yeah.
The bonds on the farms are now around 170 billion rand. The Banking Association, Cascovadia says, if you introduce expropriation without compensation, the banks are simply not going to be able to
Let's
provide
separate.
two
Let's separate.
things.
Let me assist
These are
you.
the facts.
Let's separate two things. Expropriation of land does not include expropriation of what is on top of the land. Any assets, any buildings, any structure, fixed structure, even immovable assets that are on top of the land. We are talking about ownership of the land. Earlier on, you were talking about
Property.
the unemployment rate, right? Which, of course, is in a dire situation. You can't lecture me about that.
sorry.
I'm right now coming from Vleerhof, where jointly the DA under Herman Mashaba and the ANC government in the province under Uhuru Moilwa have violently evicted
But you
people
support
from Klero.
Herman Mashaba's mayoralty in Johannesburg.
Now,
you prop him up. So
why
why are you propping up a man who's violating the poor?
We are not propping him up. You know, I don't like when educated people want to sound ignorant like you're doing now. We have never, ever propped up Herman Mashaba.
You voted him as, you didn't oppose him as mayor.
Voted for the opposition in all hung municipalities. It's not our fault that the DA became...
Well, you told the DA, sorry, to remove him as a mayoral candidate, and they didn't, and you voted for him.
Let's come back. We voted with opposition parties. Remember, Mr. Leon, you know the South African political system better than anybody else because you were in it long ago, right? Yeah. We have a proportional representation system.
I'm aware of it.
So we vote with parties. We don't vote for individuals. Let's come back to this discussion about unemployment.
No, sorry, you made a remark which I'm afraid cannot go unchallenged.
Like what?
You said, we only here talk about land, not everything associated with property.
I was
but sorry,
the brief
section,
here to talk about land expropriation.
You're a public representative. You know the Constitution. You've read it. You swore allegiance to it. Section 25(4)(b) says property is not limited to land. In other words, once you allow... No, you haven't explained.
I did.
Once you remove expropriation without... Once you remove the prevention of expropriation and compensation...
land expropriation.
So hang on.
A house is not land.
So no houses are going to be subject to expropriation without compensation?
Of course they won't.
No, but they won't be.
Of course they won't. The land on top, beneath the house.
So we are only talking...
Okay, let's make it practical. We are in the studios of ENCA right now.
Yeah.
Everything that is here is built on top of land. What we are going to expropriate and not compensate for, and what majority of South African citizens, as you've seen yourself, are demanding right now, and nobody's speaking for them, they're speaking for themselves. What we are going to expropriate and not compensate, it's the land. Let me tell you why. Currently, you love this private ownership of land and everything,
makes
right?
economies grow and are successful.
Of course, it makes your pockets grow and your...
We're going to have to hold that thought. We're going to continue our conversation with Mandisa on the economic consequences of expropriating without compensation after this break. You can keep it going on the Twitter using the hashtag LHIO. Hashtag LHIO.